Good to see all of you. Let's start here, though, because what is happening with President Trump out on the campaign trail last night? He's getting a lot of headlines over this.
You know, when they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country, when they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done.
All right, critics are pointing to that, saying he used that language also in an interview with the National Pulse, and they point to Mein Kampf from Hitler, saying this: all great cultures of the past perished only because the originally creative race died out from blood poisoning. Charlie, he has to know that people are going to be fired up about that language.
Yeah, he always likes using language that gets people fired up.
Yes,
so
he does.
That's kind of not surprising. But I think it's kind of funny to listen to Ron DeSantis say, you know, don't let the media pick the next president. I don't think the media is picking the next president on this one. But he is tapping into an issue that is obviously very, very important to voters, both Democrats and Republicans, that a lot of people around here, and in particular the media, have pretended is not a problem, and that is illegal immigration.
Well, he's also handing material to the Biden-Harris campaign, who had this statement last night in part. Saturday night, Donald Trump channeled his role models as he parroted Adolf Hitler, praised Kim Jong-un, and quoted Vladimir Putin while running for president on a promise to rule as a dictator and threaten American democracy. They went on to say he's betting he can win this election by scaring and dividing this country. Francesca.
Giving them lots of tape there. They also have commented on the dictator on day one comments that he made in that town hall with Sean Hannity. And this is a way that they have determined that they can focus on Donald Trump in the election without talking about his legal woes, which gets into dicey territory for them because they say that, of course, they are independent from the Department of Justice, so they don't want to weigh into his legal battles. But when he makes comments like that on policy, then that gives them something that President Joe Biden can then go out there and campaign on aggressively.
Mark, unforced error? Or on purpose?
Look, I think it's highly unlikely that Donald Trump's ever read Mein Kampf. I think the reality is what we have is that the left continues to attack him for something outrageous he says, but it continues to drive the issue back to border security, which is what he wants to be talking about. He has a decisive lead on border security over Joe Biden, just like he does on the economy, just like he does on international affairs. And so, yeah, he says something outlandish. They attack what he said rhetorically. But if you come back to the root of the issue, it's where a lot of the American people agree with him on.
I want to skip ahead because we've got a lot of polls here today, but I want to look at the one that has GOP candidates head-to-head with President Biden. And when you put Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Nikki Haley, they all tie or beat President Biden. Given what has gone on and what we're just talking about, Elizabeth, does that surprise you? Are you disappointed that there's not better polling?
You know, I think that where we are right now, the polls can change. You know, obviously, I think if you look at what's important to people, you know, the economy, obviously, we've seen in state after state that when abortion is on the ballot, that Democrats win, or people who support abortion rights, who tend to be Democrats, win, although Nikki Haley's trying to thread the needle a little bit there. And so I think once we get to the actual election and you have, you know, we talked about just a little bit ago, the abortion case at the Supreme Court likely being decided in late June 2024, right in the middle of these presidential campaigns, that is going to change a lot of people's minds, particularly women who have seen instances like in Texas, where a woman that, you know, a lot of people see themselves in, a mother who desperately wanted this child, but something tragic happened. She wants to preserve her ability to have future children. When people see people like that having to go into court and beg to make the decision that they and their families and their doctors made, and then having that rebuffed by elected leaders, that gets a lot of people scared, appropriately, and voting for people who will make sure that they have freedom and liberty and choice and not go the other direction. So I don't put too much stock in the polls right now. And also, look, there are ways to talk about immigration. There are ways to talk about policy choices that don't use that chilling, offensive language that should be offensive in our American democracy, which is a multiracial, diverse democracy.
Well, interestingly enough, in the midst of this campaign and the two choices it looks like, absent something changing, that are going to end up on the ballot in the fall, when asked about favorables head-to-head, President Biden and President Trump now has a 4-point advantage on favorables over President Biden. And when it comes to unfavorable, President Biden is now 3 points higher than President Trump. Charlie, does any of that surprise you?
Not really. And by the way, I sort of agree that I think all the polls are sort of kind of hard to suss out at this point. But I do think that, you know, when you boil down and look at the issues like the economy, you look at the issues like foreign policy, you look at the issue like border security, all of them, with the possible exception of the issue of abortion, Trump has and Republicans have a very strong hand over Biden on, and that's a pretty good situation to be going into the year of an election on, especially because I don't know what variables change in Joe Biden's direction between now and the election.
I mean, if the economy, they feel like there are green shoots, there's improvement there, the numbers there. And Francesca, that's something they talk about quite a bit, that they hope that there will be a turnaround in time for November of 2024. But you've also got, there's so many other polls that are troublesome for him this week. Pew has his job approval rating at 33%. The Hill reports on another poll out that has 7 swing states that President Trump is beating President Biden in all of those swing states. And there's more public chatter from Democrats who are worried about this.
And when you look at the talks that are going on with the border on Capitol Hill right now, you know, previously the White House had said that this was a closed discussion. This is the aid package that he had put forward. They were not going to be negotiating border policy. Now you see the president saying that he is open to this. That's exactly what the conversations are. And part of it, you could say, is because of the polling. Part of it here, of course, because they want to get that Ukraine aid, they want to get that Israel aid, and they know that's the only way to get it done. But it doesn't change the fact that they said that they wouldn't do it, and here's where they are.
Well, and you've got David Axelrod out there again publicly talking about his concerns. He says he's alarmed by numbers regarding voters' perceptions of Biden's and Trump's policies when president. 23% of voters said Biden's policies have helped them. 49% said that about Trump's policies. 53% said Biden's policies have hurt them personally, and 37% said the same about Trump. That's a tough batch of numbers to run for re-election against.
I would think that most Democrats are in the same place as David Axelrod. I think the reality is the polling is very troublesome for Democrats, and they've got to be scared at this point. I think when you go down the top issues of concern for most Americans, from the border to the economy to having war in Eastern Europe, war in the Middle East, and I think the reality is that Donald Trump certainly appears far more vigorous than Joe Biden at this point. I think Democrats should be pretty frightened.
Is there any chance they change out the Biden-Harris ticket, Elizabeth?
You know, I don't think so. Everyone has said that President Biden is the nominee. You know, look, things can always change. But I think that, you know, as we go forward in the process, and if Donald Trump is the nominee, I think we're going to see many echoes of the 2020 election, where people see that that rhetoric, see the potential policies. You know, the dictator on day one is an extremely concerning statement.
I would note something keeps coming up. He was sort of chuckling when he said that. No one wants to hear dictator, but it seemed very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, like, you know, is that funny? I don't think so. Like, well, you know, it's not really what you want to hear from your president, potential president. But I think that people are going to take things very differently as the election approaches, and we see which candidates are coming up to each other.